everyone, welcome back to another vlog. This is our fourth vlog together, our third looking at actual communication theory. Today we have kind of a special kind of episode. We're looking at organizational theory and a specific organizational theory. But in case you didn't know it, organizational theory still falls under the topic of communication theory, even though it might not be in the same sense that you would think of it. Organizations are pretty much functional only because of communication. So they're deeply rooted in communication. In fact, you could say their only form of existence is communication, because without communication, humans would not be able to organize. So when we're looking at our theory today, keep that in mind. Even though it's looking at the structures, it's still hitting deeply on communication. So today we're looking at structuration theory. It was developed by Anthony Giddens, and it looks at structuration of organizations in three primary dimensions. These are interpretation, morals, and power. So interpretation is how we understand things, how we interpret things. In a first responder lens, for like example, EMTs have to interpret protocols, what to do in certain situations. These actual interpretations by EMTs, and I'm sure for police departments and firefighters who have protocols all the same, they're mostly handed down by superiors using power. Power is how an organization is structured. Who can say what roles do people have, who can speak to who. Usually the bigger an organization, the bigger a power structure there is. You'll see, like in large city fire departments, very, very large systems of power and stuff like that. And but when we look at morality, one might think, oh, well, what you believe is right and wrong. And it's kind of getting at that, but it's more looking at laws, things that you can do, things that are wrong. Ethics. Ethics is a big thing. What can we ethically do in certain situations? For example, down in Powell County, Kentucky, there were EMTs who broke protocol because morally it was in favor of the person that needed it, and they got doctor permission. Now, if it wasn't for the doctor's permission, they probably wouldn't have done it, and that goes back again to interpretation of, protocols and laws. So they're all interconnected in their different ways. But why are these important to first responders? Why, it's important to all organizations, but primarily as first responders, it's important that our identities are very tightly bound to what our organizations believe in interpretation, morality, and power. Because if we disregard it, it puts ourselves at risk, it puts the public at risk. For example, unfortunately, something that happens far too much is firefighters out there get hurt, some people die, but oftentimes that can be because of a disregard of power, a disregard of orders, a poor understanding of the interpretations of the protocols. They can happen because there's been several cases of this where people just go with their instinct, and that's part of being in fight or flight. I'm not here to bash people who have gone against protocol, but it speaks to the safety aspect of sticking to the organizational systems of interpretation, morality, and power. Another reason that this is important is oftentimes first responders go through a process of school training. They get certified. I just recently finished getting my EMT certification, but there's processes for that for firefighters and police, although oftentimes for firefighters it's actually through the departments that they get into, especially with volunteer departments. But a significant part of this process is when we actually finish these classes, we go into jobs and we get placed in departments, and then we undergo even more training and more time in the classroom, more time in training, understanding what to do. And a lot of this is really to get us uniform to the interpretations of the department, the morality of the department, and the power of the department. It's really important, like I said, that we are uniform to that. Firefighters really are one of the big ones who have to stick to the power structure, stick to the interpretations. I mean, obviously, police are the same way, but I can just think of so many examples in the back of my mind of stories that I've heard about firefighters who did the right thing. They stuck to the power system and things went well. And other examples where that went out the window and they were poorly organized. And that's really what it came down to, is a disregard for at least one aspect of the three dimensions of structuration of organizations. So it's a really important thing for us to lean into when you're going through your departments, when you're going through training with your departments, as you're spending time in your departments. Lean into how to interpret. Ask questions on like if you don't understand how to interpret a certain protocol, ask a superior. If you don't understand the power structure, ask a superior that you know of how the structure works, because it's important to know the power structure in EMS and fire and for police. Morality is another big one. If you don't know what to do from a legal perspective, or if you don't know what to do in a certain situation, it's important that we have these conversations so that before events where morality is in question or interpretation is in question even, that we discuss what to do. And there's a huge linkage to these. Is really one of the biggest things that I am going to when I'm looking at these three dimensions. And I think it's important that we see the connection there. But anyway, this is a really important theory for all of us as first responders. And I really encourage you to lean into this, do more research on this. Obviously, this is more of a surface level look at it. It's not really that complicated of a theory, but it's an important theory to know. And I encourage you, like I said, to lean into it. Yeah, thank you for coming back to our vlog again here today. Thank you for listening. Share this with anybody you know who may want to hear it, anybody who's a first responder, because this stuff is important to know. And give the channel a subscribe, because we'll be coming out with, I think, 2 more vlogs before we finish this series. And we may continue from there dependent on our viewership, but we'll see. But it's good to see you all. Have a good day or night, depending on when you're watching this. So take care.